Episode 3. Reliving Old Memories. As the group started introducing each others, Debbie finally made a decision to take a break from her continuous reading and talk with the visitors. David was the first one to introduce himself to the group. He has now grown, a leadership attribute, because he was now working on his father's company. His father, Reginald, have now retired from the company, and his plan before, he went to visit different countries to spend his retirement holidays. Every now and then, he kept in touch with David and ask about the company. So, David was the first one to say, "Hello everyone, I'm David Drake. I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm currently owner of the Fidelity Group, and we are one of the top companies in D.C. My first meeting with Alex wasn't very smooth, because I was the one who was gonna marry Debbie. I know I was it wrong, and due to some influence of some people I made a bad decision to get married with Debbie. Back then I thought I was right, and I now regret it. We had some serious disputes, but it is all at the past now. I hope Debbie have forgiven me for my past mistakes." As David was saying it, he held his head down and showed that he was sorry for his past mistakes.
"It's all right, David,"
replied Debbie in forgivable voice.
"I've forgiven you, and whatever happened is in the past now."
"Thank you so much, Debbie," replied David. "As I was saying, my respect for Alex increased twofold when he helped us save our business and company. He didn't hesitate once to borrow money from others just to save our company, and for that reason, I'm forever in debt to Alex. I believe recently we repaid the loan to Alex's bank account since the Fidelity Group is now at huge profit. I would have called him sooner or later, but due to some work I couldn't. So, this is my small story about Alex, and I've been a better person since then, which can be credited directly or indirectly to Alex." As David finished his small story, all the people clapped their hands, showing appreciation to both David and Alex. After this, Nellie started her story.
"I met him when he first arrived at Washington, D.C. He was lost and he needed food. He was in search for his girlfriend. It was you, Debbie. He had very little money and he needed work. I used to work on a food truck selling pancakes and feeding people outside colleges and during any sports events. I worked tirelessly and I needed a helper. I found him outside an alley in the wrong part of the town. He arrived to D.C. recently at that time, and he needed money since he lost contact with his family members back then. I, on the other hand, needed a helper, so I asked him to work in my food truck, and we worked together. But earlier to that, he once tried my food, and he called me beautiful. I was so angry that I almost tried to hit him with a rolling pin."
As she said this, she had a smile in her face, remembering the incident. She continued,
"I wasn't pretty looking, but later, he apologized and said that people used to call any girl beautiful in their college and he meant no offense. It was then when he first saw you, Debbie and Lindsay, on one occasion. Both you guys arrived to have food at my food truck, and that was the moment he finally met you. He was so surprised that people were calling you Leona and not Debbie that he kept telling me about the incident."
As she said this, both Debbie and Lindsay replied in chorus.
"Yeah, we remember that incident."
Nellie continued,
"I was happy at the same time sad because he was diverted from work when finally I found a work partner, and more importantly, a good friend. We have been working hard, and we were making more money than ever. But after the incident, he lost his interest and only wanted to meet you, Debbie. He left everything back just to meet you."
As Nellie said this, Debbie again felt her body shiver and her heartbeat go faster. She felt a sadness in her heart, and that made her remember the times she ignored Alex when she was living the life as Leona. She thought to herself,
"If only I knew who Alex was back then, I would not have hurt him. I should have known. The only person who can make me cry by giving me my favorite food could have been always someone special to me."
As she was thinking this, Nellie said,
"Alex did everything during that time just to get to you. Every time he met you, he would have informed me what happened on that day. Some days he was happy that you liked his food, which he bought from a roadside vendor, and some days he would be sad, saying you rejected him. But he never gave up on you, and that was then I knew how much he loved you. He regrets every time. That night after your Chicago visit when he was supposed to be near you but he could not, and that night he lost you. In his defense, he did everything to get his love back, and that meant even sacrificing you when you neglected him for your own good. But he never stopped loving you."
Debbie was again in the brink of tearing up, but Lindsay hugged her and said,
"I know how Alex is and how grateful I'm to him. He was the one who saved me during my time living in New York."
As Lindsay mentioned it, David asked, "What do you mean by he saved you?" David asked this because after Alex left with Debbie, David was a changed man. He now had serious feelings for Lindsay, and Lindsay too accepted David as a very good friend of her since both were now dealing with their family businesses. Lindsay handled some of the firms of Marvel family, and David was now the owner of the Fidelity Group. So, it was obvious for David that he now cared about Lindsay in both as business partner and as well as a very good friend. David asked, "Did something happen to you? Were you hurt?"
No, David, I wasn't hurt, but I would have been if Alex did not show up at the right moment. The manager of the apartment in Lawrence Heights, where I lived, and tried to harass me and sexually abuse me, but then Alex showed up. He was living in one of the apartment rooms and he heard me shouting for help, and he rushed to my apartment. He not only helped me, but he also cut that bastard's penis, and then police took care of the rest. I was so happy Alex showed up at that right time. What do you mean by that? He cut his penis?
All the girls and even David was shocked and asked again to Lindsay to confirm what they just heard.
Yeah, he did. Alex cut that bastard's penis, as that bastard was naked at that moment,
said Lindsay with a smile.
I was sad but happy that the bastard got what he deserved. Back then I didn't know that Alex was rich and he was the owner of the Lawrence Heights, but after some time I came to know that he was in disguise and he always wore dresses like a poor guy, so I always thought he was poor. Yes, so did I.
Both Rose and Kelly agreed with that. As Lindsay was saying this, David, now feeling relieved and shocked after hearing what Alex did to a person who misbehaved, Lindsay. "Alex, you're one of the best. I don't know how can I ever thank you," he thought to himself.
He was always a great person, and he never hesitate once to put his life in danger to save a stranger. I was a stranger to him, yet he never thought twice to save me, and for that I will always be grateful to him, no matter whatever happens to him.
As this discussion about Alex was going on, Sawyer finally appeared to check on Alex's progress. As he entered the room, he was surprised to see so many people there, and on top of that he was surprised that all of them were sad and some of them were even having tears in their eyes. He silently entered but didn't say anything, and sat in a chair, since the room was luxurious and big enough to fit as many as 40 people. It had enough space. It was meant to be a storage for medicines and medical drugs, but Alex was the one who suggested Sophie that they should have a VIP room for people who preferred space, but the room was not used because many people preferred a low-cost treatment, and it was never used. But it had all the modern medical devices and equipment installed. After Sawyer entered, another person, a female with a French hat and a muffler scarf which covered her mouth, entered the room. Marianne noticed it and welcomed both Sawyer and the woman who was Flora, Alex's mother. Marianne kept list on every person, and she knew who she was. Flora also sat in a chair near to Sawyer. Sawyer had no idea that Flora was Alex's mother, as he didn't put much attention to that, as he knew that the woman was not a threat. The only person Sawyer get interested in were if any person came with a different motive. Earlier Sawyer couldn't find out that there was a person in disguise with different motive, but the person was in disguise, and Sawyer couldn't tell since he was busy in other work. The discussion was still ongoing despite them entering the room.
I know Alex, and he was always that way, even before I met him.
Debbie added after Lindsay's lines.
Alex was raised well, and his parents should feel proud of him that they've raised such a noble man.
Oh, Debbie, you have no idea how proud I am of my son,
thought Flora to herself.
I'm sure everyone will agree to this, that Alex have been there for us in our hard times, and we all should be there for him in his hard time. I hope he wakes up soon, and we all appreciate how happy we are to have him.
As this discussion was going on, one of the men, who had a black sunglass on and wore a black suit, working on the security control room, walked inside, and he went near Sawyer. He said, "Sir, I think we have a problem." Sawyer knew the person, as he was a skilled martial artist and worked for the demon sect. What is it?" exclaimed Sawyer in surprise. "You better follow me to the security room," said the man in black suit. "Okay, let's go." Sawyer stood up and addressed the group. "I'll be here in just a minute. You all continue with the stories. It is very good to know so many people love Alex. There is a small problem with one of the security camera, and I'll help these people with it." Sawyer knew he had to lie, so as to not cause any problem with the peace inside the room.
Sure, Uncle Sawyer. We will continue with ours discussion, and you come back soon,
replied Mary Ann. The episode ends with all the people keeps discussing about the past incidents, which included how they met Alex and how they were always grateful to him.